Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us from all over the world. I am Fortune from Nigeria. This webinar is brought to us by the African Community for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analysis and Author Aid. ACSRM is an organization committed to strengthening capacity in the production and use of systematic reviews and meta-analysis in low and middle-income countries. Author Aid is equally a research capacity building organization, and for more than 30 years, Author Aid has been building capacity for researchers in low and middle-income countries. So in today's webinar, we will be having a senior communication officer from Cochrane, Nigeria speak to us. She's also affiliated with the University of Calabar. So Mrs. Moriam Chibuzor, the floor is open for you. Thank you. So, okay, while Mrs. Moriam is trying to join, please note that you could share your questions in the question and answer section while she's presenting. And while the training or webinar is going on, some useful links will be shared with us, links to our social media platforms and community platforms as well. You could also share the YouTube link with your colleagues because the Zoom link is the link capacity is currently full. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So hello, it's nice to be here with you today. The topic for today is selecting studies, of course, for systematic reviews. And I wish to disclose that I am affiliated to Cochrane, Nigeria, which is a body that has its focus as the production and dissemination of systematic reviews. So for our outline of today, we're going to go through the following items. We'll be talking about, very briefly about eligibility criteria, about the screening form or checklist, some points to note about who will screen, the actual steps in screening, resolving conflicts when you are screening. We'll also highlight support tools for screening and touch on documenting the process for the screening of studies and reporting the process. So I want to assume that because this is a webinar series, that we would have already taken some other foundational topics before now. But just to help us along, I will just do a brief walkthrough of what steps are involved in a systematic review and how screening of studies fits in. So one of the first things you do, of course, when you are doing a systematic review is to define the question. And your question should be clearly and properly defined. And you also plan your eligibility criteria. The other thing you do is you plan your methods, and then you search for studies. After searching for studies, you apply your eligibility criteria. You collect your data, assess risk of bias, analyze and present your results. You interpret your conclusions, and over time, you need to improve on and update your review. But you will notice that on this slide, plan eligibility criteria and apply eligibility criteria are highlighted. This is because this is a very crucial step when you are screening for studies. You must have clearly defined what your eligibility criteria are, and subsequently, you will apply those criteria during the process of screening. So for your eligibility criteria, you have basically, it comprises of two aspects: your clinical question in PICO format and your study design. That's the type of studies that answer the question. And so we're talking about PICO. What does PICO stand for? We could put this in the chat. If you know what PICO stands for, I'll just give a minute so that we are a little bit interactive. So feel free to put it in the chat. What does any of us know what PICO stands for? Okay, great. I'm seeing people are saying P is for people or population. Yeah, somebody has said population interventions, control, and outcomes. Okay, that's fantastic. We're having them come in. Okay, so that's great. So as not to use too much time on this, I think we have the hang of it. You can keep your chats coming. So yes, PICO stands for population, intervention, comparison, and outcome. Of course, population can also be participant or problem. That is P could also be participant or problem. So that's what the PICO stands for. And in defining your eligibility criteria or in screening for studies, we consider the P, the I, and the C. That is participants, intervention, and comparison. We do not usually include the outcome as one of the criteria when you are screening. This is because many times when people conduct studies, sometimes they do multiple reports, they multiple publications of that study. Some of them may cover certain outcomes, while some of them may not. So it may happen that or the person may not even have published, on the outcome of your interest, but they actually measured it. So we don't tend to exclude studies when they do not report the outcome. So we focus more on PIC when we are screening studies. And so in the systematic review, of course, this is an excerpt from a systematic review. You will see a section like this, which this doesn't put everything on the slide, but you see studies, participants, interventions, comparisons will all be defined clearly in the systematic review. So we've talked about the eligibility criteria. How does this really come in? So when you're going to develop your screening form, you're going to use these eligibility criteria. It's very important to develop eligibility screening form or checklist when you are doing the screening exercise. This helps to prevent bias. And I want to say that screening of studies is a very, very crucial aspect of systematic reviews because, like I would say, it's garbage in, garbage out. And if you select the wrong studies, your results will be wrong. If you include the correct studies, your results will be the right thing. So it's very crucial to make sure that this process is carried out properly. So you need to have eligibility screening form to make sure that it's objective. And when you develop this form, you need to pilot it. This means that you take a few of your studies and you have maybe 2 persons take the studies and screen them, and then you compare the results. You give feedback about how easy it was to apply, where things are not clear, and then you revise your form. So piloting is very important. And when you're piloting, it's good to include a variety of studies, such as studies that look like they will be included, those that obviously at face value will be excluded, and maybe those that are unclear. This will enable you pilot your study across different types of studies that appear in the systematic review. So this is an example of a screening form. Screening forms can take many different formats. Some will just be like checklists where you tick off boxes, and some can also be in the form of a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet. So, but this is just an example. So we see that you need to identify who the extractor is. You need to put the title of this, have the title of the study. Of course, you need to put some other details, maybe may not be very mandatory, but usually maybe the reference of the study. And then the study design, the participants, the problem, the interventions, and comparison. And you now make an assessment of each of these characteristics. If all the characteristics are met, of course, it will be included. If not, it will be excluded. And where it's not clear, we usually classify as can't tell or unclear. So usually we have these 3 judgments for screening for systematic reviews. So who are those that will do the screening? There are some points we should note. It is advisable that screening should be done in duplicate. This means that 2 persons should need to screen the studies independently. We should not do them together. We should do them independently and then compare our results. This is the generally accepted and recommended practice. Though there are some exceptions, we have what we call rapid reviews, where you need to do a systematic review in a very short time. Sometimes it's to inform maybe policy, healthcare policy, and you need it in a short turnaround time. That's maybe a rapid review. So in rapid review, sometimes you reduce some of the steps or processes, rather, that you do all the steps, but maybe the processes. So sometimes one person may screen and another cross-check when you're doing like a rapid review. And in some cases, some people have studied that, okay, when you do just title and abstract screening, one person does it, and then 2 people do the full text screening, then you still have reasonable results. So these are some exceptions, but I would recommend, we always recommend that 2 persons screen each study independently. So what are the steps in screening studies? So we do it usually in 2 key steps. The first is the title and abstract screening. And in this step, you examine the titles and the abstracts of each study. You want to remove studies that are obviously irrelevant. At this stage, it's better to leave in things you are not, so clear about, rather than removing them. So we say that you need to be inclusive at this stage. So it's, if you're kind of not sure, include it. And then when you move on to the next stage, you can make a concrete decision. So studies that are assessed as include, that meet all your criteria, or which are unclear, will pass on from this stage into what we call full text screening. So all the studies that you mark as include or unclear move on to full text screening. And then what do we do in the full text screening stage? we obtain the full text of the studies. And you go through the entire study and check whether it meets your eligibility criteria. When you do that, you will obviously exclude some studies, and you will obviously be able to say categorically that some studies are included. So you examine the full text and also still make that decision on whether to include, exclude, or whether it's unclear. Now, what happens in a case where it's unclear? There may be need to contact the study author or investigator for such studies. You could write to them and ask them for any details that are missing in the report of the study. It's often a good practice at this stage, if you notice that there's any other data that is missing in the report of the study, you can reach out at once to the study author. Usually, when you write to these authors, they don't like you writing multiple mails asking for bits and pieces of information. If you put everything and order it in one mail, you are more likely to get a response. Now, I want to talk about multiple reports of the same study. In a systematic review, you do not want to just report all the studies, even when they are the same. For instance, it's the same randomized control trial. You know, sometimes a group will conduct a randomized control trial and publish like 3, and have 3 publications from that trial, but it's the one and the same study. In systematic reviews, we're interested in the study, not the reports. So when you find multiple reports of the same study in your screening process, you keep them, but you are going to link and report them as one study. And sometimes you can identify such studies because they have the same trial registration number. Many times, of course, when trials are conducted, many times they are registered on platforms and they are given a trial registration number. So when you see that it has the same number, same participant setting, many times same authors, if not all authors, but at least many of the authors are the same, then you can often piece together the puzzle and know that these are the same report. So it's important to take note of such studies. You do not want to report one study twice because this will introduce bias into your systematic reviews. It means that one person, as it were, is being counted twice, and that is affecting your results. Your results are no more correct. So let's assume you are in the process of screening and you are having conflicts. How would you resolve conflicts when screening? I have this quick quiz in front of me here on the screen, and I'd like to get our feedback. I'd like us to take this quiz. So when you and your colleague are screening studies and you cannot agree on certain studies, how will you resolve the conflict? Is it by voting? Is it by discussion and consensus? Is it by relying on the lead author to decide? Is it by arbitration by an independent team member? That means you get a team member that was not involved in the screening to decide? Or is it a combination of B and D? That is after you discuss and, you cannot reach consensus, you now resort to another team member. So please, I'd like us to put our votes in the chat. Okay, thank you very much. We had a lot of feedback in the chat box, different answers. Some say B, some say D, some say E, some say A. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what the answer is. Okay, so when you want to resolve conflicts during screening, the first thing to do is discussion and consensus. So you discuss between you and the second reviewer screener and try to reach an agreement. Many times you find out that the disagreement is because maybe you've made a mistake, you didn't notice that this was the population, or you didn't really understand the intervention. So many times when you actually discuss and your colleague shows you what he or she has seen, you will usually be able to resolve, the disagreements. But in a situation where you cannot, you should resort to a third review author. Of course, these things should have been stated in your review protocol. Before you start on your review, you must have published a protocol that details how the review will be conducted. So there should be a third author that would arbitrate, and whatever he or she says should be the final result. But in some cases, you find out that you cannot reach any resolution. So when that happens, it means that the study is unclear. You can contact study authors for more information. And if this fails, that is, if the study author does not respond, you can classify the study as awaiting classification in your systematic review report. So the answer was E. For those that said B and D, of course you are correct, because E was E was B or D when screeners cannot reach consensus. So E was the correct answer. Those that said B and D, BD are also correct. So please do clap for yourselves. So for systematic reviews, there are often many tools to assist, and these tools could be tools that assist or provide support throughout the entire systematic review process, or they could be tools that are more specific to screening. There are also tools that have been adapted for use in screening. So what tools do you know about that can be used for screening in systematic reviews? You know that when we are screening, you have multiple authors involved. Sometimes you have, if it's a large review and you have something like 5,000 studies you are screening, you may have so many people doing the screening in pairs. So how do you keep track of all of this? Usually there are tools that help with this, and that can also help in documenting the whole process. So what tools do you know about that can be used for screening in systematic reviews? Please, you can put your answers in the chat. Okay, I'm seeing Covidence. I'm seeing Ryan. I'm seeing Covidence. Somebody says Prisma checklist. Somebody has added end notes. Ryan, Prisma. Okay, someone says no idea. Thanks for your honesty. End note and Prisma and Elicit. Okay. Someone says Excel. Okay. Okay, Mendeley, Cochrane. All right. Thank you so much for the feedback. Now, I want to say that many of the answers are right. Covidence is definitely one of the foremost tools being used for screening. Ryan is there. Reference management software such as Mendeley, EndNote have also been adapted for use in screening. For the Prisma is a checklist. It's not a tool for screening. It's a guidance that tells you how to do or conduct systematic reviews. So Prisma is not included in that. Cochrane is an organization. Cochrane is not a tool for screening. So I would like to, before I highlight one or two tools, I'd like to show us or point us to this toolbox. It's called the Systematic Reviews Toolbox, and it's very useful. This is because it can lead you to different tools for conducting systematic reviews. And I think I will just go into that very briefly so that we can have a feel of it. So I'm going to stop the share of the slides, and I think I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So I'd like to, sorry, let me try and I'm trying to get to my, okay, let me see if I can do this. All right, so I don't know if you can see my screen right now. If you can, please, you can just let me know if you can see the toolbox. Can you see the toolbox? Okay, great. So this is the systematic reviews toolbox, and if you go there with that link, or you just Google systematic reviews toolbox, you can find both guidance and software for screening studies. So like you see on the screen, I'm going to go to software. I'm going to click on software, and it's asking me to select a review family. That means I can indicate the kind of systematic review I'm doing and what I need the tool for. So I'm just going to put systematic there. It's asking me about costs. So do I want the free ones? Do I want the ones that have a free version or payment required? So you just indicate, I'm going to leave it as any. And then you need to select the stage of the review you want support with. So for me, I want support with screening, of course. So I'm going to click on screening, and I'm going to say search. So you can see it has brought out a whole range of tools. And of course, you can see that one of the tools is the Covidence, which we talked about right here. We also have Distiller. Distiller is a type of systematic review software. You have Epi Reviewer. You have the JBI. Yes, somebody mentioned something about JBI. And we have a host of them, Pico Portal, Ryan, which we mentioned. So there are a host of them. And so this is a very useful tool. If you want tools also for other aspects of systematic review, you can also, instead of clicking screening, you can click, for instance, of data extraction, and it will show you different tools that are available. So I just thought to share that with us. So I'll go right back to my slides. Okay, so author support tools, of course, we talked about Covidence. It's a popular tool, typically used for intervention reviews. We have Epi Reviewer, and it's for all types of reviews, including complex or non-randomized and qualitative reviews. So, but I think Epi Reviewer is paid, we have to pay subscription for it. Covidence too, I think you pay subscription, but sometimes if you really can have a case, sometimes they may be willing to give you, you know, a free, just for one use. So there are hosts of others. I've not detailed them here because I had already gone through them through the toolbox, and you can also play around the toolbox yourself. So one of the things you need to do during the process of screening, you need to document and report the process. And you do this by developing what we call a Prisma flow diagram. It's a flow chart that shows the flow of studies right through the process of the systematic review. And so you can see here that at the top, you have the databases that were searched and the number of studies retrieved. So the number of records that were identified through the database searching, and also you have to document those that were retrieved through other sources. Of course, the number of duplicates that were removed, you need to document, and then the number of records that you screened. In addition, you now have to talk about the full text, those that passed on to full text screening, and those that were excluded after full text screening. You need to give reasons for every study that you exclude. You need to give the reasons why they were excluded at full text level. Please note, not at title and abstract screening level, but at full text level, because usually there are only much fewer studies at that level. So here there are 17, and 9 of them were excluded at full text screening, and the reasons are not randomized control trial, and the intervention of interest was not assessed. Of course, you have to document those that were eventually included in the trial in your analysis. So that's what the Prisma flow. I've broken it down so that you can see the bits and pieces. But the full diagram looks something like this, even though there are more modified diagrams these days, but I wanted to take us through the fundamental structure. So the other thing you need to do documenting the process is you need to report on excluded studies. And you need to have a characteristic of excluded studies table. So in that table, you need to explain, put the study title, the study IDs. The study ID is simply the title of the first author and the year the study was conducted. So for instance, Chibuzor, my name is Moriam Chibuzor. Study ID will be Chibuzor 2022. And then you state the reason for excluding the study. Usually this will be based on your eligibility criteria. For instance, it was not a randomized control trial. But let me say at this point that it's important to only include studies that really appear like they meet the eligibility criteria, but on a closer look, they do not. So you don't want to include every study you have excluded. Only those that were, really look like it, or, that were excluded at the full text screening, look like it, but did not meet the criteria, all the criteria. Also, you might find that studies that are well known in the field, which people would expect to be included, would also often appear in these characteristics of excluded studies. So you want to put them there so that your readers, the readers of the review, will know that you found and considered that study. You could also have another section, another table that's titled Studies Awaiting Classification. In this table, studies, for instance, that after you contacted the author, maybe the author never replied, and you are not able to make a decision on whether to include it or exclude it. You include those studies under Studies Awaiting Classification. Other studies too that could be included are randomized control and ongoing trials, ongoing clinical or randomized trials. If RCTs are the study design you are including in your systematic review. So such trial reports which have not yet been published, either they've not been put in a formal publication, whether or not the results, for which the results are not yet available, you put them as studies awaiting classification. So I'd like us to just take an example before we come to the end of the webinar. I'd like you to consider the following systematic review title: Vitamin D, calcium, or a combination of vitamin D and calcium for the treatment of nutritional rickets in children. This is the title of a Cochrane systematic review. And in summary, the eligibility criteria were participants, children that were between the ages of 0 to 18 years with nutritional rickets. Participants, of course, the same thing as the population. The study designs that were included in this or are to be included in this systematic review are randomized controlled trials. And the interventions or comparisons of interest are calcium versus vitamin D, calcium plus vitamin D to vitamin D alone, or calcium plus vitamin D compared to calcium alone. So these are the interventions or comparisons of interest. And I'm going to leave this on the screen for a minute so that we can take note of them, because I'm going to put up the abstract of a study on the screen for us to try our hands at the screening. So I'll just leave this up for a second. Please, you can take notes, and then I'll go to the next slide. Okay, so I think that we should have been able to get that now. So I'm going to go on to the next slide. Okay, so I'll keep this on the screen. I'd like us to read through it and put in the chat box whether it is included in this review, excluded, or unclear. So this is an abstract. When we searched for studies, this was one of the abstracts that was, or records of a study that was picked up. And we want to screen and decide whether this study will be included in our systematic review. So I'll just give a minute or two for us to go through it and make a decision. When you do make a decision, please put it in the chat box. Please, when you put your decision, yes, you can actually put the reason for exclusion. Okay, so I think we've gotten quite some feedback coming in. All right. So different feedback. Some say exclude does not meet up with our P. Some say it's not a randomized control trial. So we're going to go ahead on this. So for most people have said it should be excluded. And so this is the answer. It's excluded. And what are the reasons? Of course, it's not in children. And of course, when you want to put your reasons for exclusion, you choose the most prominent one, which it's not in children. Also, it's not even looking at rickets. So those could be either of the reasons. The intervention also was not okay, well, of course, the intervention was the vitamin D, which is one of the things we are looking at, but you want to also look at what it was compared to. And it was unclear whether this was a randomized control trial. They said they were randomly divided into 8 groups, but they did not really say, you're not really 100% sure how this division was carried out. It just says randomly divided. But the key things there are, it's in rats. So if I was also screening this, I think almost from the title, it's so clear. So well done to everyone. Please give yourselves a round of applause. So let's take a look at this also. So when you read through this, I'd like you to also put your reasons in the chat. Okay, the answers are rolling in. Most people are saying we should include the study. Okay. All right then. So I think that we are getting the hang of it. So this is actually how we screen studies. So this Sorry, this study is included. And reason is that it includes children. It's a randomized control trial design. The intervention compares calcium with either vitamin D versus calcium alone, because they said all the children received calcium carbonate. And then in addition, they either received vitamin D or placebo. So in essence, they were comparing calcium plus vitamin D versus calcium alone, or calcium plus placebo. So that falls into the category of interventions and comparisons we are looking at, the participants and also the study design. So this is one of the studies that was included in this systematic review. So sometimes it's not as straightforward as that. Sometimes it can be a bit difficult or tricky to pull out those ones. But I think that because of time and to enable us take questions, that I'd like to stop here. I have one or two examples again, but I think that we should stop here. So I'd like to thank you, and I'd like to take your questions. Thank you very much. So I think I'll hand over to Effiong. Effiong, I don't know how you'd like to take the questions. Fortune, Mr. Fortune Effiong, please, I'd like to ask how you would like to take the questions. If you'd like to read them out and then I answer, or how we'd like to do it. So I'll hand back over to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moriam. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can. We can hear you.
Okay, great. So please, my colleague Nafisa will be sharing the questions. Nafisa, over to you, please. Thank you.
Yeah, hello, everyone. Thank you very much. I will try to provide some questions from the chat in Zoom and then from YouTube. So there is someone asking about the outcome. What does it mean? And why we do not include it in the screening criteria? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So the outcome are, you know, those criteria you want to assess, the effects of the intervention you want to assess. For instance, for this study on rickets, one of the outcomes assessed was healing of rickets. Another outcome that was assessed was adverse events. How many of the people taking calcium or vitamin D plus calcium had one adverse event or the other? So those measurements you want to take, those things you want to measure after the intervention has been administered, carried out the trial to find out our outcomes. If you are doing something on maybe a certain cream for treating eczema, you would probably want to measure how many people's eczema was cured. That is the outcome. So basically, that's what outcome is. And the reason why we don't include the outcome, I think I had said this in the course of the presentation, is that sometimes outcomes are measured, but they are not reported. And in a systematic review, you want to actually present a holistic view of the studies that, you know, looked at what you are interested in. So if you may not know whether, if it meets the other criteria, you would put it in and report that it did not report your outcome. So that's what we do in systematic reviews, because it's possible they reported the outcome, except they tell you that they did not assess that outcome. Then you can exclude it. But other than that, you leave it in, report it as included and state that it did not report your outcome. So that's what we do in the systematic review. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The second question is, I think this question, it will take time, but maybe if this participant can return back to our previous webinars that in our YouTube channel, they can provide, like they can know. The question is, what is the difference between rapid scoping and systematic reviews?
Okay, just as the name implies, it's a systematic review that is done. Usually, I think, usually the average is about, I think, 3 months or so. I think 3 to 6 months, but I'll have to cross-check that. But usually, it could be done in as short as a period of 3 months or 3 to 6 months. So you see that many times the systematic review can take a longer time. But when people want to, like when we had the COVID, there was need for answers fast. So there was no time to spend the normal long time or process on doing the systematic review. They needed answers quick. So they had to do the reviews in a much shorter time. And sometimes when you are doing a rapid review, you may usually remove certain steps and do them in a bit of a different way. So that's what a rapid review, it's a review done in a much shorter time with adjustments to the steps, or, so that it can be done faster and results can come out quicker.
All right.
Thank you.
Welcome. The next question is, how are criteria for screening and selecting studies in a systematic review developed? And what factors should be considered to ensure they are both inclusive and exclusive enough to gather relevant data without introducing bias?
Well, for your criteria, you need to look at each of them. First of all, most of them will come from your topic, your review topic. Because when you are developing your topic, it should follow the PICO format. That is, you should be able to see the participants, intervention, possibly the comparator, and, well, not necessarily the outcomes, but usually those things are in your topic. So after you have your topic, you tease out what your participants, who your participants are, what your intervention is, and then you decide what comparison you are interested in. And usually what you are trying to find out when you do a systematic review is sometimes there's already an answer for a certain comparison, but you want to maybe find out how a new intervention works in comparison with the standard intervention. So many times the comparison will be like a new thing or what is not normally used. And then for the outcomes, that takes a process. You need to usually, some of them are obvious. For instance, if you are doing something to heal rickets, it's obvious that one of your outcomes will be healing of rickets. But other outcomes, you need to sometimes discuss with stakeholders and find out what's important to you. Oh, some of them will say, oh, it's important, the adverse events are important, this or that is important to us. So you consider many of those things when you are developing when you are deciding what your outcomes will be. But remember that
I think we lost her. In the meantime, we will share in the chat a form for questions because we might not be able to cover all questions. So please type your question. So we will try to cover it next session.
The outcomes are... Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you a bit. You can continue.
Okay, sorry. So, but I hope you heard most of what I said, or do I need to repeat any part of it?
No, just at the end.
Okay. So thank you. That's what the feedback I have on that question.
Thank you. There is one question from the YouTube. Can systematic literature review be carried out in engineering research studies? Can one, can one perform systematic literature review for one PhD dissertation? I think we lost her again. Okay, one of the questions has been asked. Maybe I will be able to answer that question, which is...
Sorry, did you say engineering?
Okay, yeah, we lost you, sorry.
Hello, everybody. While waiting for Moriam, I would like to mention that this is a certificate training, meaning that we should get a certificate at the end of the webinar series. So the second series is actually coming up next week, Friday. So after the two webinars, you'll be expected to take a quiz, and upon completing and passing the quiz, you'll get a certificate of attendance. And also we are reopening the registration form for next week. So if you are attempted to register and you were not able to register, you can try again, or you can share with your colleague. So you can get the webinar details for next week. Moriam, are you back, please?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry, I lost connection. Hello?
Yes, thank you. Nafisa, do we have more questions, please?
Yes, we do. We do have more questions. The question that have been asked, which was related to engineering science. Can it be done? This is a question from YouTube. If it can be carried out in engineering research studies, and can somebody like conduct systematic literature review for one PhD dissertation?
Okay, I would want to say that, of course, I basically work with health research, but I am aware that many other fields are also doing systematic reviews. So I think what I would just suggest is that you check the literature, search the literature and your field. If you just put the title systematic review, you'll be able to find out if there are systematic reviews. For these, many of them may have developing methodology. The methodology for systematic reviews in healthcare is very developed, but I don't know about other fields. But I do know that other fields, not just maybe, I don't know much about engineering, but I do know that other fields are also doing systematic review, and some of them have some guidance also on how to conduct systematic reviews in their own field. So this is something you need to find out. I don't know too much about it, but you can find out by just kind of searching the literature, and then you'll be able to get more information on that. Thank you.
I will. Next question is, I will take it from the chat. Someone is asking, what if we cannot access the full text? How can we get it?
Well, for full text, what you need to do, many times full text is available. Well, I won't say many times. Full text sometimes is available online. Sometimes you just need to go the extra length. Like sometimes you will see that it's on, I'm trying to remember the name of this other Edu, I think Academia things like academia.edu and all that. So you have some sites that put out things that where researchers upload their work. So such sites sometimes are useful for finding the PDFs of some of these research articles. But where you cannot, you need to leverage sometimes also on your relationships. Some people that work in, especially for developed countries or some other countries, you find out that they have access to databases or their libraries have access to many of these studies. So you can leverage on your relationships, your friends, ask them to help you source the full text. And sometimes for even countries in that are not developed, we have things like Hinari, where you can actually access some of these articles that are not free of charge. So you need to explore all your options. Of course, in a situation where you just cannot find it, you may need to report that in the study that you are not able to find the full text, that this study met the inclusion criteria, but you're not able to find the full text. So that's what to do with full text article retrieval. Thank you.
Welcome. There's someone raised his hand, Oliver. Maybe he can ask. Oliver, can you hear me? You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, the question I was asking was about social science systematic review. And I think it will be answered already because somebody said that, yes, there's an EPPI and then Campbell, they do something on social science systematic review. And he also said that next month there will be another webinar on social science systematic review. I think if that's the answer I was asking.
Oh, thank you.
Because the question was whether we can apply, but it seems most of the presentation were about health research, systematic review. So I asked whether we can also do that, start a review, systematic review in social sciences. That was my question.
Yeah, sorry, can I just jump in a little?
Okay.
Moriam, sorry, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will be collaborating with Campbell to organize a webinar next month on the applicability of systematic reviews in the social sciences. So Campbell does systematic reviews in the social sciences. Campbell, an API reviewer.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Moriam, are you able to take more questions or that's it for?
I think I could take just two more and then maybe we would have to call it a day. I think yeah.
So I will just report one question related to AI. How does technology like AI tools influence the screening and selection criteria and systematic review? Are they concerned regarding over-reliance on technology in this context?
Yeah, I know that there's been a lot of research on AI, and some are actually finding that some of these things can be very, very helpful in different ways. Some of them are able to, from the pattern of screening, when you've screened a few studies, some studies, they're able to predict, and some of them will be able to now screen. But I think there's still a lot of research going on how sensitive the screening is. So for now, I think people are still relying much on the manual screening, but some people are also using the AI tools in conjunction with of course, humans. They don't just leave it alone. Sometimes those things will bring up to the top of the list the ones that are most relevant. And then it's helpful like that. Some can also highlight those with randomized control trials, maybe study designs, and that helps you to do your screening easier. So yes, AI is really gaining ascendancy there, but there's a lot of research out there. I suspect that gradually there's going to be much more reliance on that as we go ahead. Thank you.
Welcome.
Sorry, Nafisa. Sorry, before you continue. We also have a webinar on the use of various AI tools in systematic reviews, and that's coming up by March. Thank you.
Welcome. I think the last question that we will allow is, pardon me if I pronounce your name wrong, but Tirasisius, you're raising your hand. I'm not sure if you can, but Crystal, can you hear me? You're raising your hand up. You can ask your question. Crystal, are you here? Okay, maybe Wisdom. Okay, Crystal, now you can talk, I think.
I think Crystal has put her question in the chat.
Yeah. Can we be able to define eligibility criteria to screen? Don't we need to go through the literature in order to have an idea about what we can use, how to do, please?
Yes, I think we've already answered that question. We talked about things like, of course, first of all, your interest. Usually your review question is, there are reasons why you choose to do a particular review. Except in a case where you are just saying, I want to do a systematic review, then you would review literature and try to find out where there are gaps or there are questions people are asking. And of course, that will now help to inform the kind of question. But when you already have a question that you are asking, maybe based on your practice or maybe based on one reason or the other, then your criteria are generally defined. It's just that you now fine tune it. For instance, talking about the rickets, talking about the children, you would now just basically want to define, you are interested in children, you'd want to define the age group. Is it among adolescents? Is it among, children under 5? So those are the nitty-gritty that you may now decide, okay, which group. And you have to probably go through the literature, talk with experts to know what to really situate your research question well, so that whatever you are doing will be useful to the people that use the evidence from systematic reviews. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was the last question. I will give the mic to 14. And please, I shared the link in the chat. If you have more questions, just kindly type it in the form, and we will take that later in the next seminar. Next webinar. We also provided the feedback form. We really need that to improve our webinars. Kindly also have a time and just fill it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. And thank you a lot, Moriam, for this very, very important webinar. And thank you for the value that you've shared. So I don't know if you have any link or email that participant can reach out to you directly, maybe through LinkedIn or through your email, you could share it in the chat box. Or if you could also share links to Cochrane Nigeria in the chat box, that would be really helpful. So
okay, it's just my name, Moriam Chibuzor at yahoo.com. At yahoo.com. I think, let me try and put it in the chat.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. Just to remind us of some of the things we have been sharing, it's important you follow us on our social media platforms so you are in touch with our upcoming events. And remember that this is a certificate program or webinar. You would get a certificate at the end of the 2 sessions, the webinar series. So we have another session next week, and you get a certificate after completing the quizzes by next week. And also we will be sharing the recording of this video and the link to the slide through our emails. So just to chip in, remember, like we've said, we have a webinar coming up next week. And one of the things we'll be looking at is applicability of systematic reviews in other disciplines, especially the social sciences. And in March, we have a webinar on AI and systematic reviews. So please keep in touch so you don't miss any of these sessions. Thank you very much, everybody. Moriam, do you have any final words for us?
I just want to thank everyone for your active participation. I think that it was very encouraging. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Moriam. Nafisa, Roslyn, do you have any final words?
For me, no. Maybe we can just take a picture after.
Okay,
Roslyn
fantastic. Yeah. All right,
Yes,
thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted to thank all our participants and also thank our host. I hope everyone enjoyed this season, and we're going to be putting this into practice. We'd like to see more systematic reviews being conducted and more collaboration being done. So we appreciate your presence, and thank you so much, dear facilitator. We are looking forward to the next webinar. And yeah, the photo. Thank you so much. Yeah.